Hi and hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Lace Bee podcast, following the Christmas lace notes. And in this edition, I'm looking at feast and folklore. I'm going to explore the history, culture, and stories behind some of the most cherished traditions around our food. So I'm delighted that you're tuning in and hoping that you're sitting here sipping your hot chocolate by the fire, wrapping last minute presents, or simply taking a quiet moment amidst the seasonal bustle. Today we're going to embark on a culinary journey through history to uncover the fascinating origins of British Christmas Day feast. Among the way, we're going to sprinkle in some references, some classic literature, some wonderful works that capture the spirit and warmth and occasional mystery of the festive season. And we'll consider how these drinks and dishes have evolved over the centuries, the moral lessons they often carried with them, and how modern values such as vegetarianism are reshaping our seasonal tables. So, settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin. Let's start with the crowning glory of so many Christmas dinners, the roast turkey. These days, it's hard to imagine a Christmas feast without a beautifully bronzed bird at the centre of the table. From the middle of October, you start to see them on sale in the supermarkets in the frozen department, or people putting in their orders for their Christmas bird. When we lived out towards Bedfordshire, there was a local farm that used to breed the Norfolk bronze turkeys, and they would have adverts on the side of the road asking you to phone and book your turkey order as far as early as possible. But turkeys weren't always the main dish at Christmas. Before the 16th century, people enjoyed a variety of festive fare. Goose was popular, as were more extravagant choices like peacock or even a grand boar's head for the wealthier households. Turkeys, as we know them, hail from the Americas and only arrived in England around the 1520s. It's widely claimed that King Henry VIII was the first of the English monarchs to enjoy a turkey at Christmas, and part of its appeal was practical. The turkey was large enough to feed an entire family, compared to cows, chickens, or even a goose. And as it's more valuable alive than on the table, if you think about it, cows give milk, chickens give eggs. Kill them, no more milk, no more eggs. So it's an ideal festive roast. And by the Victorian era, turkeys have become quite a star attraction. Now, generosity and warmth associated with turkey at Christmas is immortalised in the Christmas Carol. After Ebenezer Scrooge's transformation, he sends a prize turkey to the Cratchit family as a heartfelt gesture. This episode symbolises charity, empathy, and the idea that Christmas food is not merely sustenance, it's a way of showing love and care. Now, I'm going to suggest that you go over and have a look at the lace notes, and I'm going to put in some links for each of these on the blog there, and put a link in to the Gutenberg project where you can actually read most of the books I'm going to mention. Gutenberg project is fantastic. It takes out of print and out of copyright books, puts them into text so that you can read them on an e-reader, download them as a PDF, read them on your phone however you want, so that everyone has access to classic works. One of the big questions about the turkey at Christmas, which if any of you are familiar with John Sutherland's literary puzzles, is just how on earth did they manage to cook that turkey in time? Because we all know you have to put the turkey on about 3 weeks before Christmas to ensure that it's actually cooked by Christmas. Now, turkey wouldn't be complete without stuffing, something that's been a part of festive roasts since ancient times. In Roman times, stuffing was a clever way to use up stale bread and offal, ensuring nothing went to waste. Over time, it evolved into savoury mixtures of herbs, onions and breadcrumbs, with sage and onion becoming the quintessential British favourite. And historically, these herbs are also believed to aid digestion, and quite often given as how much we know tend to enjoy over the Christmas period. That's quite important. The presence of well-stuffed poultry even shows up in literature. In Arthur Conan Doyle's The Adventure of the Blue Carbuncle, one of my favourite Sherlock Holmes Christmas stories, from 1892, Sherlock Holmes finds himself unravelling a Christmas time mystery involving a stolen gem hidden inside a Christmas goose. While the story is not so much about stuffings per se, the goose, a traditional Christmas bird predating the turkey craze, reminds us of earlier times when a variety of fowl graced the table. In this case, although Charles Dickens in 1843 is talking about turkeys, in 1892 the goose is actually shown as being part of a club where someone will raise the geese from small goslings in their back garden, and people would pay money each week in order to have a goose at Christmas as something special for themselves, with the extras being sold off at Smithfield. And it's kind of poignant as we've heard that Smithfield Market is now being sold for redevelopment this year, or will close soon, that it's going to be going. Again, you can read the Blue Carbuncle on the Gutenberg Project. Now, let's spare a thought for those tiny grease spheres that can cause such debate. I am, of course, talking about the Brussels sprout. Cultivated since the 13th century in Belgium, hence the name, these miniature cabbages appeared in the UK around the 19th century. Their seasonal availability made them natural fit for the Christmas dinner. Some people adore their earthy flavour, especially when lightly roasted with some chestnuts or pancetta, while others avoid them at all costs. Now, love them or hate them, sprouts are a hallmark of the Christmas plate. Sprouts taste has changed over history. Some of the bitterness has been bred out. Now, just as coriander is a big debate, or for my American friends, cilantro, I love the taste of coriander leaves. For me, chicken with a lime and coriander mayonnaise is absolute heaven. However, I have a number of people I know, including my husband, who thinks that coriander is the herb of the devil and tastes of soap. It's down to our genetics and how we actually taste things. As a child, Brussels sprouts were revolting to me. They had a flavour that I can't even describe. It just tasted horrible. And then one year, under absolute extreme pressure from the husband, because he adores Brussels sprouts, being that they were a vegetable that were very hard to get hold of in the Australian outback during his childhood, I cooked some. But I said if I was going to do them, I was doing them with chestnuts and pancetta, because then I could eat the chestnuts and pancetta and he could have the Brussels sprouts. And the Brussels sprouts weren't that bad. So we took to having frozen ones because, one, they cook easier, and two, you haven't got to peel them and prepare them. So much easier to do. And I was buying baby Brussels sprouts from a local supermarket, and they were sweet and they were actually really lovely. And I do like the texture of a Brussels sprout. Strangely enough, I like food to have texture. And then we bought one packet and they had that flavour from my childhood again. And I realised that the bigger the Brussels sprout, the more I didn't like it, the more my husband liked it. So like Jack Sprout, we divide the Brussels sprouts up now. He gets the big ones, I get the little ones. And that makes things easier. But there has been a lot of controversy over the breeding of Brussels sprouts to get rid of the taste of that earthiness that's in there. Though we don't find Brussels sprouts specifically in the pages of Hans Christian Andersen's Soldiers like the Little Match Girl, it offers a reminder of the need for compassionate empathy at Christmas, that particular story. You can find it free at the Project Gutenberg, and it portrays a young girl alone in the cold, hungry and impoverished. And while the tale is bittersweet and more of a New Year's story, it's often read at Christmas. And the stark contrast of the tables laden with roasted vegetables and someone shivering outside is a moral call to share what we have. Our Christmas meal, abundant and warm, should inspire gratitude and charity. And I think when we think about how diverse some of the vegetables on our plates can be, reminding ourselves of how grateful we are that we have food at Christmas in one of the hardest points of the year is quite poignant. I usually, along with my standard watching films at Christmas project, which starts in November, I will listen to a Christmas story or two from the beginning of November through to December. Usually they're quite feel-good stories, um, very much in the vein of the Hallmark movies. You know, um, woman seeks new place to live, meets guy who she falls in love with. He doesn't reciprocate it. There's a misunderstanding. Normally someone else is involved. Everything comes to pass. It's okay. This year I've been listening to Jenny Colgan's The Christmas Bookshop. And in it, the protagonist has lost a job and has gone to help out a client of her sister's who has a bookshop where he doesn't seem to think that actually selling the books is a good idea, because people just don't really appreciate them the way he does, and obviously is not making any money. So she's trying to turn him around for Christmas. And one of the things that she does is have children's story time. And the first story that she reads them is Little Match Girl, which for a generation of kids who are told to be nice to people, bullying is not good, and that everyone should be happy and everyone should be in touch with their feelings, to have a story where the little girl dies causes the expected result of howling, except for one little girl whose mother obviously has her read good books because she found the story actually interesting and wanted to buy a full copy of the Hans Christian Andersen tales. There was a book that I read many years ago about how fairy tales are important to children because the original fairy tales are not happy. Nasty things happen. In Cinderella, the ugly sisters cut their toes off in order to fit their feet in the shoes. And there is a difference between things like Aesop's fables, which tell you a moral story, and fairy tales where not nice things happen. Because in fairy tales, you can tell them to a child and discuss and digest with them the realities of life that they're going to come and see. So if everything ends up lovely and no one ever gets punished, then children don't understand that life isn't like that. We have a lot of instances where I see people on social media complaining that life isn't fair when they leave and come out into the job world. And life isn't fair. Customers shout at you, they're rude. Clients have unreasonable requests. You may work for a manager who isn't very pleasant. It's not like school. People don't have to like you just because you exist. And those fairy tales help people to understand that. Perhaps the modern equivalent of a fairy tale would be the Terry Pratchett stories, where he tries to look at what was happening in the world at the time he wrote and make a commentary on it and poke fun at things. And maybe one of the best Terry Pratchettisms that most people talk about is the Vine's theory of shoes. That as somebody who isn't very well off, he has to buy cheaper shoes, which wear out very quickly and fall apart. If he could buy a better pair of shoes, they would last much longer. The idea was that if he bought a pair of shoes for £1, they would last him maybe 2 months. But a £50 pair of shoes would last him a lifetime. But he didn't have the £50 of shoes to buy the shoes, and therefore would end up spending more than that over the time. And a very interesting thing when we look about consumerism, where we have a throwaway society, and after Christmas there will be an awful lot of rubbish going out, and people throwing things away because it was bought because it was needed, but what really needed, it was just wanted. And one of the things that is quite disheartening is the amount of food we throw away at Christmas. Hubby and I try to plan exactly what we're having so we don't throw things away. And one of the reasons we don't have a microwave is because he believes that it encourages you to have leftovers, which then get put in the back of the fridge and not eaten. I don't think that's actually real, but in his mind, we cook what we need and we eat it, even if we end up eating things every single day for months. I would also mention the classic £22 turkey fiasco of around 1993. The person that I was with at the time, I said to them I would happily order and cook any size turkey they wanted, but they were to make sure that one, we had a roasting tin big enough for it, and two, tin and turkey would fit into the oven. They informed me that this had all been done and that we could definitely order a £22 turkey. I went to the butcher's, paid for my turkey up front, ordered it, picked it up on Christmas Eve, put it in the fridge. It took up all of the fridge. They were having all their friends over, and when I came to get up at ungodly an hour on Christmas morning, I then discovered that turkey and roasting tin did not fit in oven. Not only did the turkey not fit in the oven, the roasting tin didn't either. So there I was at 4 o'clock in the morning jointing a turkey. After that, I refused to cook Christmas dinner ever again for them. There's a reason I'm married to my husband. He's far more accommodating. So, Christmas puddings. I've mentioned them in my last blog. Rich, fruity delight that's undergone centuries of transformation. Originally, people enjoyed a dish called frumpty, sort of porridge with meat and spices. I have to say that sounds quite revolting. Over time, it evolved into this sweet, boozy pudding that we know today, dense with raisins, sultanas, currants and spices, and doused in brandy and set aflame for a bit of a theatrical touch. Even more so theatrical when you watch your parents running through from the kitchen, try not to trip over things and to stop the thing going out. Dickens again paints a perfect scene in A Christmas Carol with Mrs. Cratchit nervously unveils the Christmas pudding, worried it might not set light properly. And the pudding tradition, which often involves each family member giving a stir and a wish during Stir Up Sunday, demonstrates that food is much more about the ritual as it is about the nourishment. In another Dickens story, The Chimes, published in 1844, just a year after Christmas Carol, it continues these themes of moral reflections and redemption, showing us that the spirit of Christmas transcends the mood itself. The Chimes is also available on the Gutenberg project. Mince pies have a very curious backstory. I've written many times over the years about mince pies, from them being coffin shaped and things like that. Originally, they were minced fruit with meat and spices, and over the centuries, the meat gradually disappeared, leaving us with sweet, fruity little pies. By the Victorian era, mince pies were, as we know them, were small, sweet, and fragrant with a lot of cinnamon and nutmeg, and became that Christmas staple. In O. Henry's The Gift of the Magi, you can also read that on Project Gutenberg. It's not about mince pies, but it captures that again, that essence of giving. It's like the pleasures of sharing a plate of mince pies, the selflessness of O. Henry's characters who sacrifice their most cherished possessions to buy gifts for each other. Reminds us of the sweetness in Christmas lies again in that act of love, not just in the food that we eat. Another relatively modern adaptation of the Christmas plate is cranberry sauce. Now, cranberries are native to North America, and for centuries they've been included in Thanksgiving and other harvest festivals. Only in the 20th century did it make its way onto the British table as part of a marketing ploy for the cranberry boards to get other markets for people to buy the cranberries. Its tartness balances the richness of meats and stuffing. It's probably replaced, I suppose, red currant jelly as a staple on the Christmas table. Red currant jelly usually made with a little bit of pork perhaps, was always used as more of a digestive. So when you think about having a Christmas ham, um, often because of the fat content of the meat, you will add something that has a vinegar content to it, so or a tartness and acidity to cut through the fat and aid digestion. So this will be things like a chutney, or a red currant jelly, or in this case the cranberry. This blending of traditions across the Atlantic, it mirrors the kind of global exchange that we find in the Nutcracker and the Mouse King. Although it's a German tale, um, it's absolutely adored around the world and has been turned into a beloved ballet. It reminds us that the traditions change, um, not just within the country and evolve over time, but we adopt them as we become more aware of world traditions and multiculturalism, or we meet people and we like what they do and they introduce us to flavours and textures and smells and spices that we want to engage in. And those memories bring back them to our table. As I said when I was talking about food, Stollen reminds me of my great uncle George. Um, Mince pies of Henrietta and Willie. Um, every time I see them, it brings me straight back to that moment in time as a child. It's the merging of old and new, local, foreign. It makes our festive tables just more richer. So, speaking of including other people, let's talk about the rise of vegetarianism at Christmas. I was vegetarian for 13 years. I know, someone who now eats a blue steak, that's quite shocking. Um, one of the problems I found when I was diagnosed with celiac was I'm one of the few people who has a problem trying to absorb iron, um, and the vitamins A, D, and the B groups that come through very much from the fat soluble vitamins. So I went back to eating meat. It works for me. Other people just don't like it. It can be texture, it can be flavour, or it can be that they avoid it on principles and beliefs. Concerns about animal welfare, health, and the environment have grown, and more families now include vegetarian or vegan options on the holiday table. Nut roasts, lentil loaves, Wellington packed with mushrooms and chestnuts are more increasingly common. And with the rise of things like Quorn, you can now get exceptional roasts that give people a centerpiece the same way as having meat on the table will do. Every time I see nut roasts, I think of that particular episode of Butterflies with Wendy Craig, who throughout the whole entire series was the most inefficient cook in the world. And she serves up her two sons a nut roast, which hasn't got any nuts in it. To which they look at her and go, "So it's just mashed potato?" And she says, "Yes." I know that people think it's not Christmas without meat. And every so often, my husband will go through his "we need to eat less meat" phases, which is fine until he gets fed up with not having any meat in the dish and we go back to eating meat again. If you choose to pursue vegetarianism, it's no different than me saying I can't have wheat. It's your choice. And you make a meal that is something that means something to you. If it's a new choice, then you're creating your own traditions. And that's just as good as anything else. I think the moral and empathic themes running through a lot of the classic Christian literature, such as Hans Christian Andersen's The Snow Queen, published in 1844, where loyalty and bravery conquers icy evil, sort of resonate in these choices that people make where they want to do something different around the Christmas time. There was very popular in the millennium to not do a Christmas present but to make a donation in someone's name to a charity. These days, not many people send Christmas cards. Often they'll do a donation instead to charity instead of sending cards. it's sort of, if you're, I'm trying to find the right way of doing this. If you're virtual signaling, look at me, I'm doing this, it's so much better than what you're doing, then that's not really the spirit of Christmas. If you are living your life and your principles at all the times of the year and you're not compromising when it comes to Christmas, then that is fantastic. And that's what it's about when it comes to the idea of charity at Christmas. And I think it's hard to remember sometimes when we're caught up in the commercialism and the lights and the sparkliness. We've just had the Christmas fair here last Saturday. So fundraising happens throughout the year, and then they have a number of rides in the town high street. It's closed down for the day, and all the rides are free for the kids. So no matter what your social economical background is, you have the ability to access something, and you can see Father Christmas. I used to volunteer in our previous place with the Salvation Army, and I would go and wrap up all the presents that they were giving to the children that had been designated as needing assistance at Christmas. And to see the care that went into buying those presents so that a child got an age-appropriate gift, but that wasn't just something that was just being bought in mass. It felt like it had actually been chosen for them, was wonderful. And I know often in the States, I've seen something called an angel tree, where you'll get given a note about a child and they need maybe some essential things like clothing, bathing products, supplies for school, and then a few gift wishes. And people will either buy them on their own or they'll band together with family and buy a child they don't know those presents. One of the things, there's a saying in Judaism that the reward for a mitzvah is the opportunity to do another mitzvah. So the reward for fulfilling one of the laws of Judaism is the opportunity to fulfill it again or fill another one. To do something, an act of kindness for somebody is important. If you can do that act of kindness and do it anonymously, that's even more important, because there is nothing back. The only reward for doing it is the pleasure of the activity and nothing else. In The Snow Queen, the heroine Gerda perseveres to try and save her friend Kay, and how she keeps doing that and striving to get there is that those acts of selfishness. We strive to ensure that no one is left out in the cold. Then we have the drinks. What would Christmas be without mulled wine? Eggnog lattes. I'm not going to say eggnog because, let's face it, we're in the UK. Not something we tend to drink a lot, but we do like an eggnog latte. A punch, still made, or perhaps a sparkling glass of bubbly. Mulled wine, with its origins in medieval Europe, has warned people against winter chills. Wassaling, which can be a warmed beer or wine as well. Punches, spiced and sweetened, long been served to bring people together in warmth and merriment. An eggnog, which is actually a descendant of the British posset, is a sort of creamy seasonal indulgence for many people. In Clement Clarke Moore's poem, A Visit from St Nicholas, published in 1823, also known as "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," it mentions the excitement and the comfort of Christmas Eve, that warm glow of anticipation, and it's sort of that idea that drinks become part of the overall festive atmosphere, soothing the senses, setting the stage for holiday magic. And if you think about it, often on Christmas Eve, people will leave out a plate and a drink for Santa and his reindeer. Now, Our Christmas feast in the UK is not a static tradition. It's kind of a living tapestry, and it's a bit like a patchwork quilt, composed of influences of old and new, with medieval roots such as the plum pudding, and early modern transatlantic exchanges reflecting the turkey, the cranberry sauce coming in, and those Victorian sensibilities shaped by the Dickens kindness and contemporary ethics, giving the rise to vegetarian dishes. We can see how Christmas fare sets the scene in different literary traditions. In Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot Christmas, sorry, published in 38, still in copyright, not available on Gutenberg, but anyway, we encounter the classic Crabtree House murder mystery. And although it's not public domain, do seek out a copy if you can. The festive setting with the lavish decorations, the sumptuous feasting, it stands in stark contrast to the darker undertones of the hidden secrets and family motives. And the feast here becomes a stage for human drama, reminding us that the Christmas table, while usually a place of unity, can also highlight underlying tensions. Let's face it, we've all had that one relative round who thinks that Christmas Day merriment is to try and be as controversial or as poke as many people as possible. In Beatrix Potter, The Tale of Gloucester, published in 1903, that's available on Project Gutenberg, it brings us back to a gentler move. In this story, the tailor is saved from disappointment by well-dressed mice who finish his Christmas waistcoat in time for holiday. While this focuses more on the textiles and the turkey, it conveys that help, that spirit of helping one another against those acts of kindness. Much like sharing food at a communal table, imagine the tailor's relief, akin to receiving a tray of mince pies when you've run out of baking time. It's the small acts of kindness reflecting the essence of Christmas cheer. When we had the Christmas fair, in the run up to it, a lot of volunteers were knitting angels, and they're all tied to the railings outside one of the grass areas, and children are encouraged to take an angel home with them as something to hang on the tree, as a memory of the day, but as an act of kindness that someone thinks about them. And what about other Dickens works like The Chimes or Anderson's Little Match Girl, The Snow Queen? Each in their own way, these stories highlight the moral lesson: hope, redemption, empathy, perseverance. Whether it's celebratory joy of abundant dishes or the quiet reflection that reminds us of those who have less, literature and food go together hand in hand. By understanding the origins and significance of these dishes, we add that sort of extra layer of meaning to our celebrations. It's kind of like the gravy that you pour over the meat at Christmas. As we look at these traditions, it's evidence that our Christmas feast isn't just a meal. It's kind of a narrative. It's history on a plate. Each dish, each ingredient has a story behind it. The turkey echoes centuries of culinary adaptation. The stuffing tells of thrift and flavour. The pudding reminds us of long-standing customs. Mince pies carry with them a hint of medieval spice roots. Cranberry sauce reveals a blending of the old and the new world traditions, and vegetarian dishes represent our evolving ethics and inclusivity. The drinks we raise, the mild wine, the champagne, they warm our hands and spirit. They celebrate not only Christmas but also our collective history. The literature that frames these traditions, from Dickens' moral allegories to Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale lessons, from O. Henry's tender poignancy to Doyle's festive mystery, it enriches our understanding of why we eat and what we eat on this special day. So this Christmas, as you gather around the table, consider sharing these stories. Talk about the origins of the turkey, the evolution of the stuffing, the reasons behind the Brussels sprouts presence, and the shift from meaty mince pies to sweet delicacies. Reminisce about how Dickens might have influenced our sense of Christmas cheer. There was a film done about the man who invented Christmas, because effectively that's what Dickens did at the modern Christmas. Or how Sherlock Holmes' goose hints at earlier culinary traditions. Discuss how Hoffman's fantasy worlds or Andersen's moral lessons reflect the values and virtues we aspire at Christmas. Talk about the food that you shared as a child, the people missing from the table. At Passover, there is a sense of those who are not with you. there is a sense that next year in Jerusalem, it's the connection between the past, the present, and the future. At Christmas, perhaps we need to do the same thing. Your Christmas feast becomes more than just a dinner, it becomes a conversation starter. It's an education journey, an active remembrance for the values of generosity, compassion, and joy in the form of a true heart of Christmas. Whether you're carving that turkey, slicing a nut roast, simply enjoying a glass of mulled wine, you're connected to centuries of history, culture, and storytelling. And for me, I'd like to just mention one thing. In Iceland, there is a tradition of having a new book to read on Christmas Eve. Why not pick one of these traditional stories and read that this year in preparation for your meal? So thank you for joining me in this exploration of the festive meal and the timeless taste that accompanies it. May your holiday season be filled with warmth, good company, kindness, and of course delicious things to eat and drink.